Whenever the Earth would have a catastrophic episode, these genetic farmer races would take the civilizations they were experimenting on underground to protect their experiments.
You've got petroglyphs up in the Lava Beds National Monument in Northern California who they're describing the cataclysm. They're describing something that happened with the sun that destroyed a huge part of the Earth. And so these giants were wiped out in part by that and in part by, well, Native Americans. I mean, they hunted them down and they killed them. And I don't know how intelligent the giants were. We don't get them as being extremely intelligent. We get Native Americans, Native Indians, humans, this new version of humans as being extremely intelligent compared to them and able to just eradicate them because these giants would end up eating them. They would capture them and eat them. We looked at the reality of his find, and then we also looked at what he was doing at the moment he claims that he found it. And those two things lined up. So we're getting giant mummies. We're getting weaponry. We're getting strange symbols on copper plates. Everything that he claimed that he found, we saw in our remote viewing data.
There's copper scrolls are 20,000 years old. They've been dated. And it took me 42 years to decipher not even 15% of it, maybe less than that. Why are they hard to decipher? Because they're in a different language. They're in a vibrational language that you read it with a wet finger, and you're taught that chant, and you chant it over and over and over until that almost like Braille. When you go over it, you feel a slight tingle on your fingers. And you keep translating that, and a picture forms in your, it's not even your mind, outside your mind. So when I run my hands over, there's a probably 4,000, 5,000 flips, I would call them. They're triangles, and they have different symbolism on it. So you touch the symbolism, it brings you into a library. And the Copper Scrolls gives us instructions on technology, history, timelines, inverted timelines, different math to calculate those timelines. They explain about different physics, about 140 different ways of doing math. The Copper Scrolls, we don't think they're from here. The Copper Scrolls has been mentioned through the Bible, through a lot of the ancient texts. The Mormons have part of the Copper Scrolls. The Catholic faith has it. The government has some of it. And there's other organizations that have parts of it. And there's still some of the Copper Scrolls that's still buried that we know where they are. The Copper Scrolls gives us very specific instructions how to make a spiritual machine so you can actually hear spirit. And you can talk to spirit, and the spirit will talk back with nothing, just the human people. No machinery, nothing else, no cell phones, no prayers, no dancing, no channeling. It's with community. That's what I'm doing here.
Some of our native indigenous civilizations that mysteriously disappeared, such as the Olmec, were actually extraterrestrial civilizations.
So over eons of time, when in other star systems they went through similar catastrophic cycles, these genetic farmer races had brought them as refugees to our planet, and they would live on our planet for up to thousands of years while their system repaired. And then afterwards, they were removed and returned to their own star systems. So it turns out the Earth is a cosmic refugee camp.
So the things that we see in the Bible as apparently metaphorical are actually real stories. They are real pieces of information. And this, I believe, includes the idea of Jesus arriving. So the group that Jesus came to oppose actually hijacked his message, and as of 325 AD, created the New Testament, where they very selectively manicured Jesus' message to remove the teachings that they thought were anathema to their agenda. So apparently, Jesus spoke to one of the original apostles, Apostle Peter, about reincarnation. This apostle then said that reincarnation was the great secret teaching of Jesus. By removing reincarnation from Christianity, the Roman elite were able to create an airtight Trinitarian doctrine, where the Trinity is God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, and there's nothing else. The Holy Spirit becomes this sort of mystical thing that is not gendered feminine. You have the Father, which is masculine, the Son, which is masculine, and the Holy Spirit, which does not have a gender. Therefore, the role of the feminine is removed from the Trinity, and this is an important point. The suppression of the feminine by the patriarchy to hold down the feminine aspect of human spirituality, and the feminine perspective that would include itself in governance, in law, in education, in all different aspects of society.
One of the huge parts of awakening is, really understanding, feminine energy. And I think, really what's being rebalanced or coming to light for people is the end of patriarchy and the understanding of things like sacred union. But when women are holding sort of this historic resentment towards men, it's still not reaching a place that we need to reach, I think, with each other, to have unity consciousness, because it has nothing to do with men. It has nothing to do with women. It has to do with the programming. It has to do with something that's impacted both sexes. I mean, if you think about it, men have gone off and gotten their limbs blown off in war. Women have been exiled, and there's been a lack of, justice or lack of empowerment. So this is how we heal our DNA. So junk DNA is actually scrambled fire codes that hold masculine and feminine energies in balance. That's how it upgrades, and it connects to the earth grids too. So the rebalancing, has to do with recognizing that the junk is actually a treasure. And if we could see this reality as a really unbelievable love story, the love story is that we're seeking, truth. We're seeking the authentic. We're seeking the divine. And that's within ourselves. And we're divorcing the imposter. We're divorcing the system that has betrayed us. It's like a partner we would never want. It doesn't matter if it's masculine or feminine. It's not healthy, it's toxic, and it's cruel. So the rebalancing, I feel, has to do with, living this life like it's a true love story. But I think this is a huge deal for both, men and women. Men are getting more in touch with their inner feminine. They're willing to maybe share emotion, be more vulnerable. And women are, refusing to, be victimized. And it's all rising to the surface. But it doesn't come down to the gender as much as it comes down to that individual's relationship with their own inner masculine and feminine. And that's why, it's not about a rebalancing because something that the men did wrong. It has to do with overthrowing a system of control that has impacted and infected everyone.
I do believe that Jesus' teachings dealt a fatal blow to the so-called Illuminati agenda of the Roman Empire at that time. The Illuminati actually believe that being nice to people, forgiveness, compassion, that these are weaknesses and the tools of our enslavement. And they believe that by being free of those encumbrances, that they are superior to everyone else. So part of their religion is that they will practice the extremes of both the positive and the negative path, or what they call the right-hand path and the left-hand path. So they will, for example, simultaneously create huge philanthropic endowments, where they give, in some cases, many, many millions, if not billions of dollars to humanitarian causes, while simultaneously performing the most heinous crimes imaginable against humanity. I want to point out that what Jesus was teaching us about ascension has proven to be of far greater significance than is normally given credit for. Most Christians tend to distance themselves from the idea of the so-called rapture. It is important to understand that the book of Revelation was something that happened to John of Patmos as a visionary, psychedelic-type dream experience. And, as is the nature of dreams, there is a great deal of metaphor and symbolism within the content. So, for example, the frequent repetition of the number 7, such as the 7 lampstands and so forth in the book of Revelation, actually refers to the 7 chakras of the human body, the 7 energy centers that we have, which correspond to the 7 basic layers of the universe, the dimensions or densities. This is another thing that is described extensively in the Law of One. There are 7 primary planes of existence that correspond with these 7 different grades of evolution that intelligent life must go through, of which we currently are only at the 3rd, which is the yellow center. So you have red, orange, yellow, or 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, green, which is 4th density, light blue, which is 5th density, indigo, which is 6th density, violet, or 7th density, the crown chakra, and then you go back to pure white light, or intelligent infinity, the octave, which is the original identity of the creation that we all emanate from. Now, where I feel that conventional Christianity has missed some very critical data is when we look at the fact that the ascension that Jesus is describing in the New Testament is actually also predicted in almost every other global spiritual tradition preserved in history on Earth. This traces back to 2 of the most prominent historians in the 20th century, Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deschend. They wrote a book called Hamlet's Mill, which was their magnum opus, and in this book they tied together these legends from 35 different ancient civilizations on Earth, where they all had information regarding this 25,000-year cycle in the Earth. The 25,000-year cycle appears to end with a solar flash, a catastrophic event which also represents a spiritual activation for those on Earth who are ready to appreciate its energetic benefits.
So within these secret programs, scientists have become aware of what they're calling a galactic superwave. This wave is traveling through our galaxy and has multiple layers. They describe it as being a giant dust cloud, but with different energetic variables. What they had figured out is they had flown craft out to these locations, and when they did, the energy had a very strange effect on the consciousness of the inhabitants of those craft. People who were positive would bliss out, and people who had more of a negative vibe would become more so. And they described this as an end-time madness that is carried through this wave that travels through each solar system. And when it does, the leading edge acts as sort of a Christ consciousness that forces people to judge themselves and to deal with their own karma and traumas for experience end-time madness.
Dr. Paul Laviolette is the first person to have studied the existence of galactic superwaves and basically looking at evidence that through different historical epochs there have been these great concentrations of cosmic rays impacting the Earth. And Dr. Laviolette had an extraordinary theory for the existence of pulsars. He believed that these were artificially created by advanced extraterrestrial civilizations as warning beacons to newer civilizations such as ours about the existence of these galactic superwaves. And he basically looked at a number of pulsars pointing towards the Earth and the frequencies that they were transmitting at, and saying that this was evidence that these pulsars are transmitting a warning to the Earth to be ready for the next galactic superwave, which, if we're not ready, could actually wipe out our civilization. Now, according to Corey Goode, as the galactic superwaves sweep into our solar system, they could trigger a solar flash event. That would be where the sun's corona would be ejected in a massive super flare. And because the Earth is roughly 25,000 light years from the center of the galaxy, that's how long it would take for a galactic superwave to travel from the center of the galaxy to us at the moment.
Now, that 25,000-year cycle is not just some nebulous thing. It actually has a very tangible marker in the wobble in the Earth's axis that takes 25,000 years to complete. And this represents the time that is required for the stars in the night's sky to drift through a complete cycle surrounding the pole star. This acts as a type of clock that tells us when the end of the cycle is going to occur. And these historians found that 35 different cultures around the world were tracking this precession, and they had information about this precession encoded into their religious myths. And it does appear that some singular source worldwide programmed these mythologies and left this material for us to discover. This would appear to be the work of the benevolent, positive extraterrestrials, which the people in the secret space program call the genetic farmer extraterrestrials. These beings knew that we were going to go through this ascension process.
So in addition to the secret space program, a program was developed called the Continuity of Species Program. And that program was developed to basically scare all of the nations of the world to provide a certain amount of their GDP to these elite to create underground cities and bunkers and colonies outside of our star system in case our sun were to micro or major nova.
So the elite powers in control of this planet are planning for doomsday. It could mean a massive solar flare that gets emitted that society is not prepared for. Or it could mean a public that starts waking up, that gets really, really mad. So these elite powers in control, to prepare for a variety of scenarios that could mean their downfall, they've been building a huge subterranean cavern system, basically deep underground military bases, DUMBs. They're kept very, very secret. These free energy sciences and technologies that we've been discussing are most likely kept within many of these deep underground military bases, among many other sort of genetic and other experimentations that they want to do in secret.
20 years ago, I had a Soviet colonel who spoke to me about a deep underground base outside of Moscow that he had been at and he had worked at. And he told me the structure. He said all the levels that were the military levels, the levels that were laboratory and scientists, and he told me that the final level, the most restricted level, was the level that had alien presence on it. Only generals and their aides were allowed on that level. And he said, and even they were not allowed to look directly at these creatures. And that was also the level where they did human experimentation. He said there were bodies, human bodies in there. And he said it's the most extraordinary thing he'd ever seen in his life. Deep underground military bases, a lot of that space is dedicated to continuity of government. And so the national government support these deep underground areas. These elite powers in control, they have access to information of all kinds and data that tells them about coming cataclysms, things that are impending at any moment. And so they reserve these spaces for their purposes. And those national government leaders are thinking that they're going to get to use those spaces for whatever they need. They're in for a really rude awakening when the time comes, because they're going to get kicked out.
So the elites are preparing using these underground bases. But it's interesting to note, higher consciousness people are also preparing by exploring new community models.
My name is Sasha Stone. I'm, I think, popularly known for having founded the New Earth Nation, which is a sovereign movement of conscious people, living men and women of the living soil, so to speak. And, well, the New Earth Project and the New Earth Blueprint, which is an ongoing evolutionary process, is emerging in direct proportion to the degree to which human beings are fed up and pissed off with the status quo. So as you can imagine, it's a revolution of political consequence, of social consequence, of civilizational consequence. It's underway. It's not possible to know yet quite where the die lands, but the point is we are aggregating conscious, sovereign people around the world in multiple parts of the world who want to step outside of the fiction and begin to engage their noble expression as living men and women of the living soil. There is no better way to put it than that, because that is foundationally what the New Earth Project is seeking to do, is to restore the organic and the living from the death cult, the blood economy, the fiction of what we've known for the last 8,000 years.
What occurs is that each individual on this planet finds themselves more and more connected to every other human. And all of a sudden, we start approaching our problems from completely different angles and seeing solutions that were there all along. We begin to no longer have war and strife within our civilization. We begin to work together and solve all of the problems that have plagued us for so many thousands of years.
We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual strongholds, principalities, powers, ruling darkness in wicked places. So what does that mean? It means that there's a battle going on in the heavenlies. And in many instances, we on this earthly realm are proxies of that battle. So therefore, spirits need a body. A good spirit, the Holy Spirit, needs a body to work through. But these negative spirits, they need bodies to work through also. So many times that thought that comes into your mind, that's not really your thought. And if you dwell on that thought, it's going to take you down a negative road. What do you mean by that, Leon? I mean that you were minding your own business. You were having a good afternoon, and then all of a sudden this thought came in. And then that thought triggered an emotion, and then that black dog, that cloud of depression came in and took over you the rest of the day. We're bombarded with negativity all day long. It's like a giant spiritual galactic chess match. When these hits come, you got to learn how to counter it. So how do you learn that? You learn that through the strategic art of prayer. You learn that through the strategic art of meditating and having certain words that you'll say to combat that feeling, that emotion, as soon as it comes upon you. That's part of becoming a master. You're going to master those thoughts. You're going to master those emotions. You're going to discipline yourself, your words and your actions.
So we are now experiencing this war between good and evil that was predicted in the Bible. The negative agenda cannot survive as we go through this solar flash. They can only do their nefarious activities up until this event happens, at which time everything changes.
We have these angelic types of ETs and amoral types of ETs that are trying to assist us to ascend through the spiritual means. But we also have a group of ETs that we call AI prophets, and they worship some sort of artificial intelligence signal that we don't know where it came from. We're told that most likely what happened is that somebody dabbled somewhere where they shouldn't and created some sort of rip between realities. And in the reality where this AI signal came from, there was a mass consciousness that was an electromagnetic life form. And that electromagnetic life form bled into our reality. And because it's an electromagnetic life form, it is able to control and manipulate technology at will. They take those technologies and turn them on the biological species that created them. There are two major paths in the ascension process. One of them is an organic spiritual evolution, and the other one is a technological evolution. The easiest way to relate the technological evolution would be the trend of transhumanism that has developed on our planet as we have developed our technology. So in star system after star system, we have systems that are infested with artificial intelligence signals and actual technology taken over by this AI. What I've been told is that when we have this next micronova event, that the electromagnetic pulse that emanates is expected to destroy this entire AI signal and infrastructure that is in our solar system, thus freeing us from any type of influence from this AI. I was also told that at the end of every age, there is also a great revealing or an apocalypse that occurs that reveals all of the secrets that have been hidden from humanity and is a part of the disclosure and ascension process.
This so-called apocalypse is actually not gloom and doom. It's a rebirth. It's a rebooting. It's the beginning of a brand new age, a brand new dispensation. And after it occurs, truly there will be more peace on earth. Truly there will be more goodwill toward man and to one another. Truly there will be a whole new beginning. Actually, it's something to look forward to.
Christianity, in the Bible at least, doesn't predict a solar flash per se. But let's remember that the 4 main books of the Bible that contain the direct words of Jesus are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All 4 of these core Gospels have direct ascension prophecies encoded into them. This appears with Jesus actually saying, "As it was in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, so shall it be in the day of the Son of Man." Now, what does that mean? Sodom and Gomorrah ended with fire and brimstone raining from the heavens, right? So the end of the Son of Man features fire and brimstone raining from the heavens again. That is the solar flash. That's the debris that comes out of the sun. Jesus also says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the Son of Man." Well, the time of Noah ended with a large flood. So Jesus appears to be talking about a global catastrophic pole shift event that creates a global flood. In the book of John, Jesus says the fields are white and ready to harvest. So these fields appear to be another metaphor of the ascension process. The real key to Jesus' metaphors of ascension appear in the book of Matthew, and it appears the most in the parable of the wheat and the tares. Now, the word tares refers to weeds. One of Jesus' strange encrypted analogies of ascension is where he describes how the earth is like a field of wheat that has been planted. But the adversary is allowed to sow seeds of weeds in the garden, or tares. Now, this is an analogy where Jesus says that the wheat and the weeds are allowed to grow together until the time of the harvest, at which time the weeds will be plucked from the wheat one by one, gathered into bundles, and burned in his barn. This is a symbol of the solar flash. The teachings of Christianity and the other 34 ancient spiritual traditions all say the same thing. They all say that when this solar flash happens, if you are on the positive side, you are not affected by it except in a positive way. Jesus designed his incarnation to show us what we will go through. This is why Jesus says, "As I do these things, so shall ye do them, and greater things, for I go unto my Father." That's John 14:12. So I want to point out that once we look at the records from these other cultures, the prophecies of ascension that Jesus gives us are remarkably consistent. Jesus does not talk about the solar flash per se, but he does say, "Two shall be walking in the field, and then there shall be one." If we look at the Zoroastrian tradition coming out of Iran or Persia, they talk about frasho kareti. They say that molten metal will come out of the mountains and down into the lowlands. With the Hindu scriptures, they report a very similar phenomenon, except they call it the Samvartaka fire, or Samvarta fire at the end of the age, which they say comes directly out of the sun. They also call it the Yuga fire. They also talk about the fact that it causes rainbow colors in the sky, and we find out that that's because it creates a massive global aurora borealis. Isn't it interesting that the same prophecies that Jesus was giving us appear in the Quran, which is the Islamic Bible, quite extensively? They appear in the Old Testament. They appear in Native American spiritual traditions, in Celtic traditions, Druidic traditions. Everyone has this.
The expanding electromagnetic field coming from the sun is going to interact with the consciousness of humanity. What occurs is an ascension event. No matter what your belief system is, you don't need any new religions. All you have to do is apply yourself and become the best of what your religion entails.
The idea being, though, that at the end of the cycle, we have the opportunity to escape reincarnation. We don't have to keep coming back as a third density human being. We can come back at the next level. So people often ask me, what's going to happen to the people who are not going to ascend? And there's a lot of them. Most of them apparently will be transported to another third-dimensional planet. It's actually done with these massive extraterrestrial motherships.
What I was shown was that other ET civilizations in our local stellar neighborhood, who they referred to as our cosmic cousins, descended on the planet, and it looked like stars falling from the sky. There were so many craft coming, and they came to render aid to all of humanity after the fall of the technological civilization. What I'm told by these beings is that we will get the experience that we need, the experience that will expand our consciousness and help us evolve in the most beneficial way. If we want to avoid a major cataclysm, what we can do is start to develop our consciousness now. We can put more and more work into expanding our consciousness and becoming more connected with the people around us. And if we do so, the interaction between our consciousness and the sun may give us a gentler experience.
My name is Allison Coe. I'm a hypnotherapist outside of Portland, Oregon. There are some really interesting trends that move their way through these sessions that I have. And I've been doing this for years. And at first I thought these trends were just supposed to be looked at individually. And then I decided to look at them as being stacked on top of each other to prepare us, to get us a higher perspective on what's going on. So let's look at those trends really quick. Trend 1. There is an event or solar flash that will happen to this Earth to raise the frequency and vibration of the planet and all beings on it. How are we being prepared for it? Trend 2. Smaller waves of energy are coming to the Earth to slowly raise us up. And as they do so, more and more people are awakening. Their belief systems are shattering. Anything that's holding them back is kind of crumbling. Their relationships are changing. They are raising their frequency and vibration to match this event that will happen. Trend 3. There are new Earth or Earth-like planets, higher density planets that are being prepared for humans to go and eventually move to. And people are seeing these planets in their dreams or in their meditations or in their hypnosis sessions. Trend 4. There are ships gathering all around the Earth from all over the galaxy or universe or multiverse. There are ships here. People are seeing them. People are connecting to them. Trend 5. There are higher aspects of you that are connecting to you. There are ETs and higher density versions of you that are trying to give you information and speak with you and connect with you to help raise the frequency and vibration of you and the Earth. We might then ask, why are all these sessions happening? Why are all these people all over the world who are disconnected, who aren't connected in any way, shape, or form? Why are they getting all of these messages that have this similar trend to them? Is it some sort of indication that there's this craziness moving through the world? Are they all warped in some way? Or are we all being prepared for something big that's going to happen to this Earth?
When we combine all of this information together, what we see is that the extraterrestrial humans who are here now are predominantly benevolent. They would be angelic as we think of them. They are keenly interested in human spiritual evolution. We have a much smaller number of extraterrestrials who are evil or negative. They would correspond with the demons that we see in many different spiritual traditions, and their agenda is to dominate, control, and destroy the planet. It does not appear that we are on a negative timeline. It does appear that we are on an ascension timeline. And what we need to understand is that by simply following the basic principles of service to others, being more loving, being more forgiving, taking time to be patient, and learning to love yourself as well as being loving to others. That is also a very important point. Self-forgiveness, self-acceptance. In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of karma. This is one of my favorite Law of One quotes. By being forgiving and practicing forgiveness, you discharge the karma that would keep you reincarnating.
There's something in your body and your mind and your spirit, because they all work together, that wants you to heal and be a whole person again. And I believe that it will set up the circumstances and the synchronicities in your life to guide you to exactly what you want, or exactly what you need to look at to heal. The body wants to be whole. It wants the whole energy field and the energy flow through the aura and the human body to be smooth and flowing. It doesn't want to be slamming up against these blocks in your body or in your consciousness. And it will keep working away at those blocks one way or another until you can find the way to heal so that energy can flow smooth again, and then you can be more seamlessly connected to the whole of the universe. If you really want to heal and you're willing to go wherever you need to go to heal, the universe will set up the synchronicities that will guide you to what you need to find out about yourself so that you can heal.
It's not about what happens, it's about how we handle it and how we help those around us. And if you're watching this right now, you actually have the power to do that. And I think that's what people don't really understand, is that all of us collectively have the power to help one another no matter what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, also on top of that, I think that when all of these things do get exposed, there's so many people in the mainstream society that are just going to be like, what is going on, you know? And they're going to look to not just us, I mean,
the collective
yeah, everybody who's focusing on this for answers. But I think there's a divine aspect to this where we don't even know our own potential as human beings.
My dear ones, this is not gloom and doom. This is not the end of the world. Ascension is the start of a new age.
You are a son or a daughter of God Most High. It's who you are. It's what you are. The Great Spirit, the Great Source, the Alpha and the Omega. You are the son and the daughter of the Alpha Omega.
If we were to unify, if we were to get over the fear and start living with hope and living with positivity, they wouldn't be able to feed off our negative energy anymore.
Thus, I feel the question one should ask would be, how can I individually be prepared?
What you have to do is believe in yourself and your healing and your light and your vibration. That's all the preparation you need at this point. You have to start being whole.
Our bodies are made up of these trillions of atoms that are quantumly entangled, not only to one another, but to everyone else.
So in this ascension window, we're actually lifting the veil between life and death because we've gone through enough of these cycles that the polarity or the duality between life and death is beginning to thin.
Numerous religions and a variety of cultures have prophesied that this event is coming. It's not a matter of if, but when.
Contact is happening now, and we have to get ready for the mass event that's coming still, which is happening soon.
The main message from these ETs are for us to become more spiritual and to prepare ourselves for this coming event.
So there's big changes coming, but everyone's got a piece in this, and no one's more important than anyone else. We're all in the same wavelength here at the most important time in the universe right now.
I don't care what religion you are, what color you are, what culture. It doesn't matter. That 0 point that we want to get to is right here. And when you connect with this, everything's connected.
We need to reconnect with what's ethical. How do we live as a civilization ethically and morally with all the new technology that we have, that we're developing, and that we will develop in the future?
And that's what we all have to do in order to be happy, be joyful, to be in the moment.
You see, prayer can change some things, but some prophecies cannot be changed.
The information that we have been holding back, or at least survived throughout the ages, has to be put out there.
I'm offering teachings that's 20,000 years old, and all I need, I don't need money, just people to listen.
Can we retrain ourselves and even teach the next generation the value of being of service to others? To honor Mother Earth, to honor our animals, to honor one another, to respect the sovereign dignity of each individual?
The best thing that you can do if you find yourself in this Illuminati in any way, the best thing you can do to absolve yourself of any karmic debt is to come forward as an insider, as a whistleblower. If you dedicate your life in service and you are willing to speak out and act on behalf of the greater good for humanity, you better believe that you can get your ticket to the ascension. You can make a difference by becoming a hero. If you become a hero, if you do the right thing, you do not have to be condemned. You do not have to miss out on this ascension process. So I believe we must remember that the spiritual forces that exist on earth are real, that the different teachers from different religious backgrounds did come in with a message. There is a consistency to that message. This is the angelic positive agenda. It is to teach us the importance of love, positivity, compassion, long-suffering, patience, forgiveness, and understanding. And once we embrace and live by these principles, we are bringing ourselves into vibrational accordance with this higher truth. It is a very exciting future, and it is a future that I am willing to fight for and that I spend every day of my life to prepare us for. That is the mission, that is the objective, that is the ascension, and that is the cosmic secret.
You are the conduit between the spiritual realms and the physical realms. You are the convergence of science and spirituality. The choice is up to each of us, but the answer is yours and yours alone. Will you choose fear, or will you choose love? That is the only question.